Hello and welcome to another rendition of the LightWarriors Academy, where we are featuring heart-centered entrepreneurs who are making a difference in both their communities and in the world. And today I am so excited to be presenting with someone that, you know, they are just really good at closing sales, and he is so passionate about helping people to 2 to 3x their existing revenues that it's fantastic, it's miraculous, it's wonderful, and he's having a good giggle backstage. So I'm just going to go ahead and bring him on and welcome in Brandon Garrett. Hello and welcome to the show.
Hi, Miss Samantha. How are you?
I am doing fantastic. It's so funny to interrupt a conversation, because we were just having a fantastic conversation backstage to interrupt it with this wonderful introduction, which I hope I served you in the best way possible.
I greatly appreciate it. Thank you for having me here. It's a pleasure.
Well, thank you so much for being here, because what we were really talking about backstage was really melding in the idea of intuition with building businesses. And one of the things that I've absolutely adored in our previous communications, because we've talked quite a bit now, is your ability to really get organized and systemized in building your business. Do you want to talk a little bit about how you've grown and created the things that you've created?
Sure. So, I mean, with regards to the intuition stuff, we're definitely want to spend some time on, diving deeper into that. That's something that having a practice that allows you to tune into that is a key component for entrepreneurs or people in general. I mean, your audience is very widely cast, so you may have just some people just tuning in that would benefit from something like that too. But as far as organization, like, people tend to shy away from organization, in my experience, because they feel like that kind of structure, that kind of discipline is going to really inhibit their freedom. And while on the surface that seems very accurate, and it certainly feels that way intensely, it's really by creating those systems, those processes, having that structure, that discipline, the dirty D word sometimes in the space. That's the key to having freedom, because you've got designated time to carve out to do the things that you need to do to move your business forward, move your life forward. If you've got certain personal goals that you're going after, and then when you have the downtime available that you should also be scheduling, it's truly downtime. You can completely unplug. You don't have to have in the back of your mind, oh my God, I still need to do this, this, and this. Like, you've already got it scheduled out. So that's really super important for all of us, and it's a challenge when you first move into the space to create that for yourself as an entrepreneur. Many of us, grew up in a traditional school system. You got 40 minutes, 50 minutes, a bell, and then the next class, and you go on and you get a career, a job, so to speak. And it's kind of the same way. Our schedules are very micromanaged and structured throughout the day, and then once you take the leap into the entrepreneur space, well, there's no one to tell you, hey, you need to go punch in. Hey, it's break time. Hey, you need to go eat. Hey, you missed this deadline. Like, it's all on you. So it really is on us to start to overcome some of that resistance to creating structures and processes that allow us to have the freedom that we really are wanting.
So what were some of the starter steps that you had taken from when you switched from corporate into your entrepreneurial space?
So I have a pretty rough road at times, learning by trial and error, obviously. I did have a little bit of a leg up, I feel like, in that the job that I had before I walked away from corporate. I was a multi-unit manager in retail, so my schedule was my own in terms of developing a business rhythm and stuff. So I did carry that with me. But just in terms of creating structures and processes, like I've had to try a little bit of everything, different planners, studying on time blocking. You first, you just have to immerse yourself in all this content, go be a consumer. But at some point, the rubber has to meet the road, and you have to start implementing and trying things long enough that you realize, hey, this really doesn't work for me. When you try anything new, especially when it comes to managing our time, if we've never managed it before, it's going to feel uncomfortable and you're not going to like it anyway. So to try something for a couple of days, when that's going to be the expected feeling that you're going to have anyway, and then say, oh, well, that doesn't work, you're really doing yourself a disservice. You really have to try to commit to things for a little bit longer time, but don't be afraid to give yourself the flexibility of, hey, I really like this particular planner, but it doesn't have these things in it. So I could just X that out and then create a new one, which is something you even did to yourself recently, was create your own planner. And then in that spirit, I kind of created the massive whiteboard that everyone, now that I've moved the office around, everyone always sees the whiteboard behind me. That's really kind of become the lifesaver for me, is having a visual reference. Digital planning methods and stuff are great, but there is something about the tactile. As human beings, when we write something, we're using significantly more neural pathways when we write things down. And then in addition, it's written in written form, it's in your face, you see it every day, so you have that constant reinforcement too. But creating that, what works for you, just comes by trial and error.
Yeah, and I don't think you could have said it any better. I know, and yours is so complex and so well thought out. I mean, we spent a day together, and you just went and explained your system to me, and it was like I was so awestruck by your system. But that was me too with my planner, and it is challenging putting it together. And you do have to go through that process of, I hate this and I hate this, and Jesus, isn't there anything here that's going to make me happy? And that's when you get to the point of picking the pieces that really work for you, and then creating something that's just right and that you can actually manage forward. We were talking it backstage a little bit about the frustration of constantly having to go through a new system because that's all that's available. If you're willing to put in the front work to creating a system that's going to impact the way that you move, and it's going to work because you've tested everything that doesn't, then you can't help but succeed by the things that you create.
Right, absolutely. And that's one of the key components is finding that success through the creation. So many people get bogged down in the shiny ball syndrome, right? There's always a new product. We all just are still going through it right now. Everybody and their mom had some sort of Black Friday special. Now it's Cyber Monday. Starting tomorrow, it's going to be a 3-week blitz or whatever it's going to be called, through Christmas. Like, there's always going to be that. So you have to at some point just be like, hey, I'm going to try this and I'm going to stick to it, and then chop it up if it doesn't work, get rid of the parts that don't, and then create the new that does. It will reap dividends for you well beyond anything you can imagine, but you have to be willing to put in that work up front. There is no way around it. As much as we in the communities that have a spiritual focus to our approach to life and to our business, as much as we want to talk about law of attraction and meditation and like all this stuff, it still requires action. Like, the law of attraction works, but it still requires you to make a committed decision and take action towards the result that you're asking for, so to speak. It's not, oh, I can just sit here and think about, oh yes, I'm making $100,000 a month, and I can feel it and all. It's not about that. It's making the committed decision that, yes, this is what I want, and I surrender to the how, because I may not know how to get to $100,000 in revenue a year or a month or a day, depending on what stage that you're at. But I'm going to make the committed decision that that's what I'm going to go after. These are the results that I want. This is the why. I know the first 2 or 3 steps, and I'm going to go take those. That's That's what really, really matters. And we have to make sure we're taking those actions every single day and getting organized, having a system, a process in place is only going to allow that to come at you and towards you and through you easier, because we all have systems and stuff within our businesses. Many of us can create that for other people, for our clients, but then we don't take the time to take a little bit of the self-care and create a planning system that allows us to manage our business on a daily basis to go forward.
So what can you say would be 3 or 4 skills that would help an entrepreneur from protecting them from a failure?
Protecting them from a failure in what way?
Like, what are 3 or 4 skills that you can offer the audience that would protect them from failing, from creating their goals through, because we've been talking about the organizational sort of aspect. Mm-hmm. Is that clearer for you?
Yeah. So the first thing I would say is get over your fear of failure. Failure is just feedback. If anything, get over your fear of failure. It is just feedback. Nobody likes to fall short, but I had an interview earlier this year. I think it was in June or July, with Mir Ezra. Fantastic hour that I got to spend with him asking questions. Very, very insightful. For those of you that aren't familiar with Mir, definitely check out his website, the things that he's doing regarding family and businesses, and it's just phenomenal. Like, made his first $100 million by the time he was like 30 years old. But as we were talking through this very topic about failure, about goal setting, Mir said something that I feel like I had felt that way before, like I understood it, but just the way he articulated it really made it land for me, and was a completely different perspective on goals in relation to failure. He says that success is the sum of all validated improvements over time. Success is the sum of all validated improvements over time. So even if you're not hitting your goal, you fall short, if you've got validated improvement, you've still experienced success. And to piggyback on that, there are no unrealistic goals, only unrealistic timelines. Perhaps you didn't have the planning put in place in such a fashion that allows you to meet that goal at the time frame you asked for it, or you anticipated for it, or you were just too aggressive. But that doesn't mean you failed. I can't stress that enough. And another quote that comes to mind, I think Tom Bilyeu said it in an interview, podcast interview that I listened to, that, take your 10-year goal, whatever it might be, and go after it like you're going to accomplish it in a year. You're going to fail, but in 6 months or a year, you will have made so much further progress towards that goal that you will be light years beyond anyone else that was only worried about pursuing their 1 year goal. It's like, wow.
Oh, that's so good. I love that. And what I'm hearing from you is you do a lot of mindset work. So how has leveraging all of that mindset work, all of that organizational, really been able to impact you towards your success? How has it affected your growth?
Well, mindset is key. I think there's a lot of talk about how important it is, and people may feel very passionate about it, or they may be very put off about it, because it gets into that personal development space. Sometimes you start talking about meditation or yoga with certain people, and they're like, "Oh, that's a little too woo-woo for me." But time and time again, as I listen to the podcasts that I listen to, follow the people that I follow, from Tony Robbins to Brendan Burchard, David Meltzer, like, they all say the same thing when they are coaching presidents, top C-suite executives, people that are shaping the very fabric of what goes on in the world, so to speak, inevitably it all comes back to mindset, even when they're performing at such a high level that those type of people are at. So having that focus around mindset is key. I absolutely 100% would not be where I'm at without having done that uncomfortable work, finding out, hey, do I really think and feel and believe these things? Or do I think, feel, and believe these things because up until I was 10, 12, 14 years old, when our brain is in theta state and is able to basically be like a sponge and an open computer program, do I think and feel and believe those things because that's what I was told? Like, that's tough. And when it starts to butt up against things that are sensitive topics for people about, self-esteem, it could be body image, it could be confidence in the boardroom if you're an executive, or spirituality or religion or anything like that, like you're starting to get in some very difficult areas. But that's where that discomfort is, where the growth is. Everything that you want, or that you say that you want, lies outside of your comfort zone. The only way to get there is to be uncomfortable, because if you were capable of having it and being comfortable, you'd already have it. So that life that you say you want is outside of your comfort zone. It's going to require you to embrace that discomfort. And without doing that, I wouldn't be here. And it sucks, right? I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh, you can meditate, you can do yoga, you can go to church, whatever it is, you can go walk, every day, like all this stuff we all hear everybody talk about online, right? That's all great. That doesn't make doing the work any easier. It's dirty, it's ugly, it's you're shining a light on the big scary monster in the corner of who you think you are. But without doing that, you're not going to see that it's not really that big and scary, and that you can separate yourself from that and start to make those positive changes. And ultimately, if you're running a business, if you're not putting in that kind of work, you're doing your clients a disservice, because they need you at your best.
I couldn't have said it any better myself. I love how you really marry the idea of really focusing in and honing in what like people like to call the woo-woo, right? But really it's about creating that balance of really tuning in with your intuition, which is essentially what you're talking about through the meditation and the yoga and whatnot. It's getting centered and getting in tune with your intuition, but it's completely useless if you don't take action on that inspiration that comes through those spaces. So what would you say has been the best strategy that you've learned, and what kind of impact did it create in your life?
Probably the biggest one is meditation. And there's all different kinds out there. But and regardless of your religious or spiritual beliefs, meditation is something that's talked about across multiple, religious and spiritual belief system, because it's only in that time of stillness that you're able to start to tease apart and peel back the layers of who you are versus who you think you are. I mean, the average person has about 60,000 thoughts go through their mind in a single day, 90% of which are the exact same thoughts as the day before. So if you're going through your day on autopilot and you're not taking even just 5 minutes to learn to slow down and visualize that mental traffic that's going by in your brain, and start to separate yourself from that, you're never going to have that peace and stillness during the day. If you can't do that, give yourself that 5-10 minutes in the morning, do you think the world, once you step into your office at 9 a.m. or whatever time, like, no, it's emergency after emergency after emergency, or need after need after need, or fire after fire after fire. Like that's just the nature of it. So if you don't create that skill first thing in the day, you're going to be on the edge of burnout before you realize it. And it took me a long time to really grasp not really the purpose of meditation, because it's a very personal experience, but just going into it with the intention of being there to be there, not doing it because I want something out of it, because, oh, I know if I do this, I'm supposed to experience inner peace, or I'm supposed to be able to tap, hear God's voice, or tap into source, or whatever it may be, for your particular beliefs. Like, no, it's about just being there and being still, being available, so you can start emptying your mental and emotional cup. That way you can hear that still small voice, that intuition, that is the real you, that is connected to divine consciousness, whether it's God, Allah, whatever. You're not going to have that during the day unless you have that time specifically set aside. And it's been 2 years to get to where if I don't start my day with a little bit of meditation, I'm like all out of sorts. I flat out I'm almost to the point where I will make myself late to the next activity just to make sure that I get that during the day. And it's a lot of work. Again, going back to everything you want outside our comfort zones, you're going to have to be uncomfortable. And to really make that message land home, because I know there's some people out there in your audience that may be new to some of this intuition, based stuff, or there might be some out there that are very, very much into all of this, but new into the business space. You guys, get uncomfortable. If you're not willing to get uncomfortable, you're not going to get what you want. Think of it this way: your comfort zone are where your dreams go to die.
That's so true. Yeah. There's a quote that I've heard recently, and it's the new take on insanity, right? The old take was, if you keep doing the same thing over and over and over again, then you can expect the same results. If you're expecting different results, well, you're insane. That's right. The insanity formula. But there's a new take that's saying, if you don't do anything, then don't expect results, because you have to be willing to put in the work on both sides. It's a balancing act in order to create anything, any desire that you want, whether it's a sale, as is your expertise, or weight loss or health that might be someone else's expertise. The fact of the matter is you have to be able to put in the work and create the balance in order for anything to thrive. So I want to reel this back a little bit and talk a little bit about some of those fun nicknames that you had that you had brought up to me a little bit earlier.
Yeah. So the one that there's an actual a better story behind that might bring your audience some value is the tag, the game over closer. That nickname is actually the result of some pretty intense personal work to get to where I am. When I originally walked away from corporate and to start an insurance brokerage, I had a lot of corporate knowledge, business acumen, that kind of stuff, but I hadn't really ever had any sales experience. There was a brief stint in college during the summer where I worked for a dealership chain, the regional dealership chain, selling cars, and it was 100% commission system. But they have the draw set up, so you don't go a week without pay, but you go too far in the draw, and you don't get to sell cars anymore. And I worked there for some time, and the sales manager, big baseball fan, and anytime I would go out onto the lot, when someone would walk on the lot, he'd always say, "Go get him, Gagne! Go get him! Game over, Gagne!" Eric Gagne, for you non-baseball fans back in the day, was a pretty decent pitcher from what I understand. Not Hall of Fame level or anything like that, but his nickname was Eric Game Over Gagne, because they would always bring him in as the closing pitcher to wrap up the game. Little did I know that at the time he wasn't using that in such a friendly fashion, because that game over meant, we're not going to sell that car, because I couldn't sell a car to save my life. I ended up drawing out. of sales, and kind of had that mindset, well, I guess the sales aren't for me. And then fast forward, 10, 15 years later, whatever it was, I decided to open an insurance brokerage, and here I am, no sales background. I'm like, well, I probably need to learn about sales. So working through some mindset and limiting beliefs around that, not necessarily from that experience, but it did give me a very bad belief system that, hey, I couldn't sell. And working through that, I took the Game Over Closer name and some other people that I had shared the story with about my journey with sales. That kind of became the armor. That became the superhero cape. So no longer is the Game Over Closer, meaning you're not going to get nothing sold. The Game Over Closer, hey, I get on the call like it's game over, like you're buying or you're not qualified, like that. That's what it is basically. But that didn't come without a lot of work, to really be like, hey, this is who I am. It's not a negative connotation, but for those out there that have those limiting beliefs about themselves, the obstacle is the way. Mm-hmm. Whatever you think is holding you back, if you can step away from it, step outside of it far enough and long enough, there will be a way to use that as your springboard into your next level of success.
So good. So good. Now, I wrote down a note because I love your Game Over little nickname, Game Over Closer. And I was hoping that maybe you might be able to tip your hand and share one of your favorite Game Over strategies with us.
Yeah. So I would say the biggest thing with sales is there's as many people teaching sales tactics out there as you can count grains of sand on the sea, on the beach, right? And everyone's always got the magic formula, the magic script, whatever it is. But the thing of it is, there is no magic formula. There is no magic script. Every sale is the same. Okay. It sounds very counterintuitive because there's the human element. These prospect, this person, Sally's got, this issue with her body. Every sale is the same. Okay. But what makes the sales process unique is how you present yourself on that call. Sales isn't about pushing a product or a service down someone's throat. It's about something deeper, or it should be about something deeper. At least it is for me. And I think that's where the Game Over Closer thing kind of comes in. It's about intention. You've got to go into that call from a place of service. That's why the morning practice, meditation, whatever it is, to empty your cup. Like, you have to do that so you can be who you need to be to best serve the prospect when you're on that call. Because even though the sales process and that sales call is 100% about the prospect, who you are and who you bring to the call is 100% about you. So what that ends up playing out as on a sales call is any limiting beliefs that you have, any negative associations about money or about being sold or about your body or whatever it might be, that might relate to the product or service. If you haven't dealt with that correctly, it's going to come out through the prospect on the call because you're going to be projecting that energy. So being unattached from making money on the sale and coming from a place of service is ultimately what has led me to where I am. My calls are very consultative. Most people, when I share recordings, they're like, that wasn't a sales call. Like, you were just having a conversation. Yes, I'm just having a conversation. Being human, people have this strong desire to be listened to and need to be heard. And when at the end of that, you're going to be asking somebody for $500, $5,000, $50,000, $500, whatever it might be. If they don't feel heard, they're sure as shit not going to buy anything from you. But that's not even what it's about. You need to be of service on the call, give them such clarity and such value that when they leave that call, whether they buy from you or not, when they leave that call, they have left your presence better than when they first met you. That is how any sales interaction should go. If you aren't presenting your product, your service, and yourself on that call in a way that provides clarity, delivers immense value, and allows the prospect to make an informed decision that's going to leave them better than when you found them, you're doing yourself and your client a disservice, because you're not going to be able to help them if you can't close them. You can't help them if you can't close them. And you can't close them if you're not being of service.
That's just, oh, I love the points that you have made in this call. And I think for anyone that really wants to understand the art of closing their sale and really hitting the nail on the head with impact, really needs to come from that heart-centered place. And oh, I just love the way that you worded it. It was so good. So Brendan, how can people find out more about you?
Yeah, so I've got my own, personal Facebook and LinkedIn pages. You can check those out. But the big one that I would have everyone check out is closersclub.co.uk. That's the crux of where I spend the bulk of my time. We're a remote sales company specializing in 2 and 3x in business coaches revenue without increasing their cost while still giving them back time in their day. And that approach is not just mine. That's the culture within the company. So if that at all resonates with your sales professional and that at all resonates with you, we are always looking for top talent. If you're a business coach and that's how you want your brand to be perceived on calls, check the website out there too. We are very selective about who we work with as a client and as a sales professional. There's an application process and stuff that you're going to have to go through, but there's a reason for that, and the proof is in the pudding. We deliver the results that we do because we come at things that way and because we're so selective.
So good. Thank you so much for being here, Brendan. You have just hit the floor with gems and nuggets, and I know for myself, I want to rewatch this video because I think there is so much value here. Is there anything else that you would like to add in closing here today?
Oh, I see what you did there. In closing, poet didn't know it. I would bring it back to that attitude of service. And we were even talking about it, before we got on the call. Carve out that time, be of service to yourself first, 5, 10, 15 minutes a day. Number one. Number two, find a way to serve, whether it's your time, your resources, chair, whatever it might be. Go be of service, go be giving of value because it's the right thing to do. Then be of service when you're on a call with somebody, when you're closing somebody, okay? And there's an opportunity to close somebody everywhere you go. Closing is not something you do when you get on the phone. I'm going to get on the phone, I'm going to close this person. No, being a closer, closing is who you are. You can close the little old lady in the grocery store line ahead of you at the store, to reach out and start revitalizing the relationship with her estranged daughter. That's closing. That's sales. That's influence. That's having an impact. Don't just look at it from, hey, I have to get on this phone, I have to close this person. Be a closer, be of service.
Thank you so much, Brendan, and thank you for doing all that you do, because we can tell that you come from the heart, and really that's what matters. And it comes in so many shapes and so many forms. Thank you so much for doing what you do, and thank you for being here and be willing to be featured in the Light Warriors Academy.
It's an absolute pleasure to be here. I greatly appreciate the opportunity.
Thanks again.
Bye-bye.